The day my twin brother came back was the day everything began to rot. I remember the weather clearly: thick, humid air pressed against my skin like decaying flesh, and thunder rumbled low in the distance, echoing like a growl from some sleeping, ancient beast beneath the earth. The clouds were swollen with rain, but it never came. The sky held its breath, just like I did when I first saw him again. Elias had been missing for 10 years. And now he was standing at our doorstep. I stared at him through the screen door, the porch light flickering behind me, casting shadows over his face. He was pale, too pale. His skin looked like wax. His eyes, once bright and sharp like mine, were sunken and hollow, as if something inside had been scooped out and never returned. Elias? My voice cracked, hoarse and trembling. Is it really you? He tilted his head slowly. Yes, Evan. It's me. I came home. Something was wrong. I could feel it, a primal chill crawling down my spine. The same kind of dread I felt when we were kids and we found that dead dog in the woods, its eyes still open, staring at nothing, its tongue chewed off. Where have you been? I asked, stepping onto the porch. Elias didn't answer immediately. He smiled, but it was wrong. It stretched across his face like it had been stitched on by force, his lips trembling slightly, as if he didn't understand how to do it. I don't remember, he said finally. But I'm here now. We were identical twins, mirror images down to the birthmark on our left shoulders. People used to joke that we were clones. But Elias always felt darker. He was curious in a dangerous way. When we were little, he dissected frogs and left their innards in my sock drawer. Once, I caught him staring at our mother while she slept, just standing in her room for hours, his hand twitching at his side like he wanted to touch her face but knew he shouldn't. When he vanished at 17, no one knew where to start looking. No clues. No signs. No blood. Just his empty bed, the window open, and claw marks on the frame. Real claw marks. I never told anyone about that detail. Now, 10 years later, he just appeared. No explanation. No police escort. Just Elias, standing barefoot on the porch, clothes damp with mildew, and smelling faintly of wet earth and something metallic. I let him in because I had to. He was my brother. He looked exhausted, like he'd clawed his way out of a grave. And maybe, in some way, he had. He ate very little that night. Only raw meat. I watched, too disturbed to speak, as he tore through a rare steak with his teeth, juice dribbling down his chin. I don't like cooked food anymore, he muttered between bites. I forced a chuckle. You been living in the wild? He didn't answer. He just stared at me, unblinking. I tried to ignore how his eyes looked too wide now, like he was always watching something behind me. He didn't blink. Not even once. I counted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing something, scraping sounds from the walls, a whisper beneath the hum of the ceiling fan. I thought I was imagining it until I heard footsteps just outside my bedroom door. I called out, Elias. Silence. Then a knock. 3 soft, deliberate taps. I sat up in bed, the sheets clinging to my sweat-soaked skin. What do you want? No answer. I got up and opened the door. The hallway was empty. Only the faint smell of rot lingered in the air. The next morning, I found something carved into the wooden floor just outside my door. Let him out. I stared at it for what felt like hours, the letters jagged, raw, as though someone had gouged them with their fingernails. When I asked Elias about it, he smiled again, the same wrong smile. He doesn't like being trapped, he said quietly. Who doesn't? I asked. Elias looked away. By the 3rd day, things had gotten worse. The lights in the house began flickering uncontrollably. Appliances turned on by themselves. The mirrors fogged up even when no one was using the bathroom. And then there were the dreams. I dreamed of tunnels, long, narrow, dripping tunnels carved into the ground. I walked through them barefoot, following the sound of whispering voices and something wet slithering just behind me. And always, I saw Elias at the end of the tunnel, naked, crouched over something, feeding. I'd wake up screaming. Every single night. And Elias would be standing outside my bedroom door. Smiling. On the 5th night, I found him in the attic. I had gone up to find the source of the scratching sounds that had kept me awake for hours. But what I found made my stomach lurch. The attic was filled with dead animals. Dozens of them. Birds, rats, even a raccoon, all arranged in a grotesque circle, their bodies twisted and broken. Their insides were removed and placed in neat little piles around the center. In the middle of the circle was Elias. He was crouched on the floor, his eyes closed, his lips moving rapidly in a language I didn't recognize. His fingers were covered in blood. He was drawing symbols on the wooden floor. I shouted his name. His eyes snapped open, and they weren't Elias's eyes anymore. They were black. No whites. No irises. Just endless pits, like looking into a hole in the world. He lunged at me, but I slammed the attic door and locked it, my heart pounding against my ribs like a jackhammer. I could hear him screaming on the other side, guttural, inhuman howls that echoed through the walls. And then, just like that, silence. I called the police the next day. When they arrived, the attic was empty. No dead animals. No blood. No symbols. Just dust and cobwebs. They looked at me like I was crazy. Elias played his part perfectly. Calm. Polite. Smiling in that dead, hollow way. I think he's not well, Elias told the officers, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. He's been under a lot of stress. They believed him. They always did. I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked. I set up cameras around the house, hidden ones. I had to know the truth. That night, I heard the whispering again. Soft. Slippery. Coming from the vents. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I checked the footage. At 3:17 a.m., Elias stood at the foot of my bed. He stood there for 13 minutes. Then he bent down slowly, his face inches from mine. I watched, paralyzed with horror, as he opened his mouth, and something long and black uncoiled from his throat. It reached toward my face. I shut the laptop and vomited. I had to get out. I had to leave the house, get away from him. I packed a bag and waited until he left to get groceries, or at least pretend to. But when I opened the front door, Elias was standing there. He hadn't gone anywhere. "You're not going anywhere," he said quietly, his voice not his own. He stepped inside. And behind him, standing just outside the threshold, was another Elias. Identical. Except his skin was cracked like old porcelain, and his eyes were missing. My breath hitched in my throat. "Elias." I whispered. The one who lived with me turned to the one outside. "Not yet," he said. He still doesn't believe. The other Elias grinned with a mouth full of teeth, far too many teeth. That night, the power went out. The house was swallowed by darkness. I locked myself in the bathroom, clutching a knife, heart racing. From the other side of the door came his voice. Or maybe their voices. "You left me there," it whispered. "You let them take me. You forgot who you really are." Something scraped against the wood. Nails. Claws. I pressed myself against the tub, hands trembling. "You were always the weak one, Evan," it said. Then the lights came back on. And carved into the bathroom mirror in dripping black letters were the words. "You are the twin that doesn't belong." I stared at the words on the bathroom mirror for a long time. You are the twin that doesn't belong. The black substance wasn't ink or paint. When I touched it, it smeared like blood but smelled of something sour and ancient, like rusted iron left in the ground too long. I wiped it clean with shaking hands, but the words reappeared moments later, identical in shape and stroke, like they had been branded into the glass. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My brother, or the thing wearing his face, was moving through the house, whispering, laughing to himself in low, crackling tones that sounded like insects crawling through dry leaves. At some point, the air grew so cold I could see my breath, even though the thermostat remained at 72. Something was wrong with the mirrors. It began with the hallway one. At first, it was just a flicker, Elias passing behind me when he wasn't home. I turned, and no one was there. The next time, I saw myself blink in the mirror, but I hadn't blinked in real life. Then, late that evening, the mirror smiled. But I didn't. I backed away slowly, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My reflection stared at me, its head tilted just slightly off, its mouth twitching in unnatural jerks like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. The smile widened until it cracked the skin on its cheeks. Blood seeped from the corners of its mouth. Then it raised its hand and traced a word onto the inside of the glass. Switch. I smashed the mirror with a crowbar. The glass shattered in slow motion, it seemed, splinters catching the dim light as they scattered. For a heartbeat, I saw something behind the mirror, a second face, identical to mine, grinning with pitch-black eyes. It vanished with the shards. That night, I covered every mirror in the house with cloth. Every reflective surface, mirrors, TVs, even picture frames. Anything that could show me something other than what I wanted to see. I duct-taped curtains shut. I took the batteries out of my phone and laptop. I wasn't taking any chances. Because I realized something then, it wasn't just Elias that had come back. Something came with him. Something that lived in reflections. On the sixth night, I heard the voices again. Not whispering this time, chanting. Low and rhythmic. Coming from the basement. I grabbed the crowbar and flashlight and crept down the stairs. The temperature dropped 10 degrees with each step. My breath fogged the air. The basement light was out, of course, but the chanting grew louder, clearer. There were two voices. One was Elias. The other was mine. When I reached the bottom step, I aimed my flashlight and froze. There were two of them, back to back, kneeling in a circle of symbols scrawled across the cement floor in what looked like teeth. Human. Animal. All sharp. Elias turned first. Then the second me turned. It was me. My face. My eyes. My scars. But wrong. The skin was stretched too tight, like it had been stitched over something too large. The lips moved slowly, forming words with no sound. It opened its mouth and let out a soft, wet gurgle, like it had forgotten how to breathe air. I ran. I tried to leave the house, but the doors wouldn't open. Neither would the windows. The locks had fused together like melted plastic. The keys twisted in the knobs and snapped off. I screamed, pounded the glass, but nothing broke. The house had sealed itself shut. I was trapped. With them. The next day, Elias acted like nothing happened. He made breakfast. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Bacon. He whistled as he cooked, an eerie, cheerful tune I didn't recognize. "You're looking pale, Evan," he said without turning. "Not sleeping well?" I didn't answer. I watched him, watched how his hands moved too fluidly, how his tongue flicked out sometimes between words. He didn't blink. Ever. When he handed me the plate, our fingers touched. His were cold. Not just unwashed or weathered. Dead cold. Like meat left in the freezer too long. You're not Elias, I whispered. He smiled again. Of course I am. But you're not Evan anymore. I barricaded myself in my room. I had to think. Had to remember. The attic. The symbols. The reflection. The voices. The chant. Everything pointed to one truth: Elias hadn't come back alone. Or maybe not at all. I dug through our childhood belongings, searching for anything that might explain this madness. And that's when I found it, Mom's journal. Hidden behind the drywall in the closet, wrapped in an old shirt stained with something brown and stiff. I hadn't seen it in over a decade. Inside were entries written in frantic, desperate handwriting. Half the pages were torn or smudged. But one stood out, dated 3 months before Elias disappeared. There's something wrong with Elias. He talks to the mirrors. He says they speak back. Last night I found him staring at the bathroom glass for over an hour. He didn't blink. He didn't move. When I touched him, he whispered, "I'm not the reflection anymore." He is. This house is cursed. I hear things in the walls. Sometimes, I see another Evan watching me in the mirror when you're outside playing. He looks hungry. Like he wants to come through. I'm starting to think, one of them isn't mine. I dropped the book. The truth began to creep in like mold behind the wallpaper. This didn't start now. It started long ago. Before Elias vanished. Before we were even born, maybe. What if one of us had never been real? What if I wasn't the original? That night, I heard the knock again. 3 slow taps. I didn't answer. Instead, I crouched by the door and listened. A whisper came through the wood. "You're in the wrong skin." I backed away. Then came a scraping noise. From inside the walls. It moved, fast. Left to right. Up and down. A rat? No. Too fast. Too heavy. It was following me. I ran to the living room and tore the cloth from the mirror. The room was empty. But in the mirror, Elias was standing behind me. Only, not quite Elias. This version of him was wet. His hair hung in damp strands. His flesh sagged like it had been waterlogged. His eyes were wide, black pits, and something long and slick was crawling beneath his skin like worms trying to escape. He raised his hand and touched the inside of the mirror. So did I. But his hand was already there, waiting. And when our fingertips met, the glass cracked. I stumbled backward, but it was too late. The mirror pulsed, like a living organ. Veins spiderwebbed through the surface, black and throbbing. And from its depths, it crawled out. The other me. Fully formed. Wet. Smiling. It didn't speak. It only reached forward and touched my face. It burned. "Switch," it whispered. And then Elias stepped beside it, smiling too. The real one. The imposter. I no longer knew. "You're not him," Elias said. "You never were." My vision blurred. My legs gave out. The room twisted. The walls pulsed and throbbed. Everything smelled like rot and bile and blood. I looked up at them, at the twin versions of myself and my brother, standing side by side, perfectly still, like mannequins awaiting orders. Elias knelt down beside me and whispered in my ear. "You were never born. You were made. Now the mirror wants you back." Then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed. White walls. The scent of antiseptic. A nurse came in and smiled warmly. "Good, you're awake. You've been unconscious for days. They found you passed out in your home. Malnourished. Dehydrated." I blinked. Where's my brother? She paused. You don't have a brother. What? She frowned. Your records show you're an only child. No, I whispered. That's not possible. She tilted her head. Do you need to see someone? We can schedule a psychiatric consult. I stared at my reflection in the window. My heart stopped. The reflection didn't move. And then it smiled. The smile in the reflection didn't match my own. I was frozen, staring at the hospital window as my reflection grinned, eyes wide and glassy, twitching unnaturally. Behind me, the nurse was still talking, but her voice became background noise. All I could hear was the soft tapping on the glass, my reflection drumming its fingers on the inside of the window, even though I wasn't moving at all. Then the reflection mouthed something I couldn't hear. 4 words. I never went away. I backed away from the window so quickly I tripped over the 4 line and fell onto the floor, the heart monitor beeping wildly. The nurse rushed over, calling for help, trying to calm me down, but I was already in freefall, my mind cracking at the edges. Nothing made sense. Nothing felt real. But one thing was becoming clear. I didn't know who I was anymore. They kept me in the psych ward for 3 days. White halls. Fluorescent lights. Time bled together. I tried to explain. About Elias, the mirror, the voices, the thing pretending to be me, but they chalked it up to a breakdown. Trauma response. Delusional paranoia. No sign of head injury, said Dr. Collin, flipping through her notes. But your mind is showing signs of dissociation. Evan, you've experienced something intense. It's normal to construct defenses. I wanted to scream. But I knew it wouldn't help. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't know about the mirror's pull, the way it had eyes, the way it fed. They didn't see Elias, or the thing that wore his skin. They didn't wake up every night gasping, sure someone else was breathing through their lungs. The 3rd night in the ward, I woke to a strange sound. Weeping. Not loud. Soft. Barely audible. But it came from inside my room. I sat up slowly. In the far corner, in the shadows near the sink, someone was standing. It was a boy. Barefoot. Soaked. Wearing a torn hospital gown. Hair hanging in wet strands over his face. He turned slightly. I saw half of his face. It was me. But younger. 12 maybe. The age I was when Elias first began talking to the mirrors. I whispered, "Who are you?" The boy turned fully. His face was wrong. Warped. His mouth stretched unnaturally wide, his eyes sunk so far into his skull that only darkness remained. He took 1 step forward and said in my voice, "You forgot me." I couldn't move. "You let them take me." The lights flickered. Then he lunged. I screamed and backed into the wall, covering my face. When the nurses rushed in, there was no one else in the room. Just me. And my reflection, still smiling in the mirror across the room. They released me a week later with a prescription and a firm warning to seek therapy. I played along. Nodded. Smiled. Told them I was feeling better. But inside, I was unraveling. The seams between myself and something else were tearing. When I returned to the house, the air was heavier. Like the place had been sealed and forgotten for centuries. Dust covered everything, and the smell of wet wood and old blood still lingered. The mirrors were still covered. But now, I felt them watching me through the cloth. Every time I passed one, I heard breathing. I dug into our family's past. I had to know the truth. If I wasn't real, or if Elias wasn't, someone had to have known. I broke into my parents' old storage unit, left untouched since they passed, and sifted through boxes of old photos, letters, and VHS tapes. That's when I found it, a home video labeled Twins, First Year. I played it on an old portable TV in the corner of the attic. My mother's voice crackled through the speaker. Here they are, Evan and Elias. Born 15 minutes apart. The camera panned to a crib. 2 babies. One smiling. The other crying. That's Elias, my mom said. He's been fussy lately. Keeps staring at the mirror in the nursery. I think he's afraid of something. She laughed nervously. Sometimes I swear there's a third baby in there when I turn my back. I paused the tape. Rewound. Played it again. She definitely said a third baby. It wasn't possible. Was it? A twin meant 2. Not 3. But then I remembered the dreams, the endless tunnels, the other versions of me crawling from the walls, the phrase over and over. You are the twin that doesn't belong. Had there been another? Something that was never supposed to survive? Something that still wanted in? That night, I peeled the cloth from the bathroom mirror. This time, I was ready. I stared into the glass, not blinking, not moving. I watched myself. Watched for the flicker, the twitch, the tell. And there it was. My reflection smiled again. Only this time, I smiled with it. Because I finally understood. The thing in the mirror wasn't trying to steal my identity. It was trying to return to its own. It had never left. I had been the mirror the whole time. Suddenly, the glass warped. The reflection stepped forward, pressing against the surface. The mirror groaned and flexed like it was breathing. Cracks spiderwebbed outward. Blood trickled from the corners of the frame. And then it whispered. One must remain. One must return. Then he stepped through. The other me. Fully formed. Grinning. Wet. He stood in the bathroom, identical to me in every way, but his eyes were filled with a knowledge I couldn't comprehend. Like he remembered a place beyond death. A black space behind glass. You've had your turn, he said softly. I stumbled back. What are you? I'm the part of us that was cut away, he whispered. Buried behind the wall. But you let them forget me. You let them live without me. I didn't know. He smiled. That's the thing about forgetting, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Then Elias entered the room. But not my Elias. The real one. His eyes were wide, brimming with terror. Evan, don't trust him. He's not. The other me turned and slammed his hand against Elias's chest. Elias flew backward, hitting the wall with a sickening crack. Blood poured from his mouth. I screamed. The other me looked back at me. He tried to seal me out too. But you opened the door. The mirror behind him shattered. And from the broken frame, more hands reached through. Dozens of hands. Pale. Decaying. Some burned. Some rotted. Some covered in eyes. They pulled themselves out, mirror versions of me, all twisted, malformed, impossible. They surrounded the room, whispering in unison. Only one may remain. I realized what they wanted. A choice. Either I gave myself up, or I would be torn apart by the pieces of me that never made it to this world. I turned to Elias. He was barely conscious, blood pooling beneath him. His eyes met mine. Don't let them take you. And that's when I knew. They weren't here for me. They were here for him. Because he had been the one to cast the ritual years ago. He had made the deal. He had tried to seal the mirror. I turned to the other me. Take him. Leave me. He paused. Are you sure? I nodded. The mirror things surged. They dragged Elias's screaming body toward the shattered glass, dozens of hands pulling him through, folding him backward, bones cracking, his scream echoing like glass breaking inside my skull. And then he was gone. Silence. The other me stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. You made the right choice. I woke up the next morning. Sunlight streaming through the windows. The house was clean. Quiet. No smell of rot. No voices in the vents. No whispers from the glass. The mirrors were empty. Just me now. Just one twin. The world felt balanced. But sometimes, when I pass a dark pane of glass or the surface of a still lake, I see movement behind the reflection. A hand. A smile. A shape. Waiting. And I remember what the mirror said. One must remain. But which one am I? The mirrors had gone quiet. For a few days, I thought it was over. I wanted to believe Elias was gone, taken, consumed, erased. Whatever he had become, whatever pact he made with the mirror realm, it ended when they dragged him through the broken glass like a puppet of skin and screams. I should have felt guilt. Regret. But all I felt was numb. The silence was suspicious. Too perfect. Like the house was holding its breath, waiting for the next crack in reality. I stayed out of the upstairs hallway where it had first begun. The air there still felt wrong, warped, slightly colder than the rest of the house. I knew something still lingered. Just beneath the walls. Just behind the mirrors. Watching. But the true horror began when I noticed the door. A door that hadn't been there before. It was at the end of the second-floor hallway, where the linen closet used to be. Same wallpaper. Same molding. Same light fixture above. Except now, where the closet once stood, there was a narrow wooden door. Old. Swollen. Warped by time and moisture. No handle. Just a black keyhole. The kind that seemed to look into you. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at it. Time unraveled near that door. I could hear something beyond it, like breathing, slow and thick, as if a giant were asleep behind the wall. The next morning, the door was gone. But only in reality. In every single reflection, it remained. In the hallway mirror, in the black screen of the TV, even in the chrome kettle in the kitchen, I saw it. Sometimes, in the reflection, it stood open a crack. And someone stood inside, watching me from the shadows. I avoided the mirrors again. I didn't sleep. I covered every surface that could reflect. I showered with the lights off. Ate in silence. No screens. No windows after dark. But I kept dreaming of the door. And in the dreams, I stood before it with a key made of bone, trembling as I inserted it into the lock. Behind the door, I heard voices, not screaming. Worse. Whispering. Thousands of them. Speaking in unison. Calling me back. Saying my name in reverse. Knave. I returned to the attic. Something was calling. Pulling me upward like a hook behind my navel. I climbed the creaking steps, each one groaning like an old lung inhaling dust. The attic was colder than before. Covered in cobwebs and a thick film of dust that looked like ash. The air was tight. Hard to breathe. And in the far corner, where old baby things were stored, I saw something sticking out of a torn cardboard box. A notebook. Small. Leather-bound. Burned around the edges. I opened it. Inside were drawings. Hundreds of them. Drawings of me. Some with no face. Some with black pits for eyes. Some submerged in water, others hung upside down, bleeding into mirrors. In every sketch, there were two versions, one smiling. One screaming. At the center of the book was a final drawing. A door. The same door. And beneath it, in jagged handwriting. They sealed him there. But he never sleeps. The forgotten must return. The mirror wants balance. I dropped the book. The attic shook. That night, the door appeared again. In real space this time. No reflection. No hallucination. It was there, at the end of the hall, as solid and warped as ever. A faint thudding came from behind it. Like fists pounding softly on damp wood. Not demanding. Just patient. Repetitive. I approached. I didn't want to. But I did. Drawn. Compelled. There was no key. Only my reflection in the brass of the keyhole. I whispered, "What's behind there?" And the voice that replied sounded like Elias. "You are." The next morning, I got a knock at the door. It was a woman in her 60s, trembling, her eyes darting behind me like she could see through walls. "Are you Evan?" she asked, clutching a rosary. I nodded. "I used to live in that house," she said, voice shaking. "When I was a girl. Before they sealed the room. I let her in." She moved through the house like she was revisiting a crime scene. Her fingers brushed the walls like she could still feel the old screams in the paint. "I had a brother too," she said. Her voice broke. "They took him through the mirror. Same as yours. Same as all the twins who live in this place." She looked at me, tears forming. "This house doesn't like balance. It always wants one. And when there's two, it demands a trade." I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't need to. Because she then said something that froze the marrow in my bones. "The one that returns, is never the one who left." I begged her to tell me how to stop it. She shook her head. "You don't stop it. You accept it. Or you seal it again." She handed me something wrapped in cloth. A small, yellowed mirror shard. "It came from the forgotten room," she whispered. "Use it to see what's real." Then she left. I sat in the hallway that night, staring at the door. I held the shard in my palm. It was warm. Throbbing like a heartbeat. When I angled it toward the door, the mirror shard shimmered. And suddenly, I saw inside the room. There was a crib. There were bones. There were two figures, one small, curled in the fetal position, weeping softly. And one standing behind him. Grinning. Waiting. It was me. Or something wearing my face. The eyes were gone. Just hollow sockets leaking black fluid. Its hands were long, bony, and each finger ended in tiny mouths. When it noticed me watching, it whispered. "You left me in the mirror." That night, the door opened on its own. I heard the creak. The whimper. The breath of something ancient crawling into the hallway. I stepped outside my room and saw the forgotten room had come back. A soft light glowed from inside. Like candlelight flickering through bone. I approached, slowly, holding the mirror shard like a blade. The walls of the hallway pulsed. The air tasted like metal. When I reached the doorway, the reflection inside the shard began to scream. High-pitched. Continuous. Echoing from every mirror in the house. But I stepped inside. Because something in me remembered. I'd been here before. As a baby. As a soul. As something waiting to be chosen. The room was empty now. No bones. No figures. Just mirrors. Dozens. Hundreds. Stacked and angled into impossible shapes. A maze of reflections. Each one showing a different version of me, dying, crying, laughing, twitching, burning. The voices whispered. Choose the truth. Or remain forgotten. The door slammed behind me. I was inside the mirror world now. And it was hungry. I was no longer in my house. The moment the door to the forgotten room shut behind me, the air shifted, dense, wet, and metallic. Every breath felt like inhaling fog made of old breath and broken teeth. I turned in slow, measured circles, gripping the mirror shard tightly in my hand like a weapon. The room had become a corridor. Or perhaps a labyrinth. Made entirely of mirrors. Mirrors on the walls. The ceiling. The floor. Every surface reflected something, sometimes me, sometimes something else. And none of them were the same. One reflection wept. One bled from the eyes. One smiled with its skin turned inside out. One twitched, jerking in place like a marionette cut from its strings. And one stared at me. Still. Silent. Waiting. It had no eyes. Each step I took was swallowed in silence, the kind that made you hyper-aware of your own heartbeat. I moved forward, deeper into the maze, and my reflections multiplied, me at 5, me at 15, me as a decaying old man. Some were twisted. Some rotted. Some looked exactly like me, but blinked at the wrong times. One reflection stepped out of sync. Turned its head left while I turned mine right. It reached toward the glass. And grinned. Cracks formed in the mirror. It began to push against the surface like it was soft skin, its fingers worming through the cracks like vines. Black ichor dripped from its hand, sizzling on the mirrored floor. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The mirror pulsed. Then shattered. The thing crawled out. It wasn't me. Not anymore. The creature that emerged had my shape, but not my soul. Its skin was made of glass, jagged and sharp, reflecting countless versions of pain across its surface. Every movement sang a sound like 1,000 razors being drawn across bone. Its face split open in a crack of laughter, revealing rows of mirror teeth, each one showing a reflection of my death. It rushed toward me. I swung the shard. The moment glass touched glass, the air filled with a scream. Not from the creature, but from the walls themselves. The mirrored corridor rippled like water, distorting every reflection into something worse, something that didn't even resemble me anymore. I ran. The halls changed behind me. The maze shifted, bending space like I was inside a living organism. The mirrors became veined. The reflections inside began to rot. I saw my mother hanging from a chain of baby teeth. I saw Elias being dissected by copies of me. I saw myself being born from a mirror, clawing through it like wet birth tissue. One hallway led to a mirror shaped like a door. I pressed the shard against it. It hissed. And opened. Inside was a room of eyes. Every surface was coated in mirror glass, but every mirror had a single eye staring out. They blinked in unison as I entered. Some wide and human. Others goat-like. One blinked sideways like a lizard. They were watching me, not with curiosity, but with judgment. At the center of the room stood a figure draped in reflective skin, an amalgamation of every version of me I'd seen so far. Its voice was layered. Deep. Childlike. Hollow. You weren't the first, it said. You were just the strongest shell. Shell. I whispered. It stepped forward. As it moved, the floor cracked beneath its feet. You think you were born. You think you were real. But you were carved from a reflection. Molded from a curse. A twin to fill a space that should have stayed empty. No. You were made when they tried to separate you, it hissed. When Elias rejected the mirror. The mirror retaliated. It took his image, and gave it breath. My knees buckled. You're saying. I'm not real. You are real, it said. Just not here. You belong inside. The creature raised a hand. Behind it, a mirror peeled open like a wound. I saw myself inside. Floating. Eyes closed. Not dead. But not awake. A reflection without a surface. A soul unanchored. The monster stepped aside. Come home. I turned and ran. Again. But this time, it followed. The reflections chased me, twisting, crawling through the walls, screaming in voices that sounded like mine. Each mirror shattered as I passed, and from every crack spilled blood and teeth. I slipped on the glass. Fell hard. Looked up. And saw myself, standing over me. Not the monster. Just, me. Wearing the same clothes. Bleeding from the same wounds. End it, he whispered. He raised the mirror shard over his head. I screamed. Suddenly, I was falling. Through glass. Through light. Through memories. I saw every moment of my life flash backwards, Elias smiling, my mother rocking me to sleep, the lake, the attic, the missing years, all of it reversed and replayed in a shattered kaleidoscope of impossible images. And then I hit the floor. I was back in the forgotten room. The real one. The mirrors were gone. The walls were wood and mold again. And Elias lay in the corner. Bleeding. Eyes wide. Still alive. He croaked, you didn't, go in. I did, I whispered. But I didn't stay. He smiled. But something was wrong. He looked at me. And said, you're not him. I stumbled back. Looked at my reflection in a shard of glass on the floor. It didn't move. It just stared. Then it smiled with mirror teeth. The smile in the shard of glass didn't belong to me. My body trembled as I backed away from the broken mirror on the floor, the reflection staring up at me with a grotesque grin that split its face too wide. The mouth was filled with mirror teeth, sharp, glinting like razors. Each one showed a miniature version of me screaming inside its jagged surface. I wasn't looking at a reflection anymore. I was looking at a prisoner. A version of me that never left the mirror world. A version that had watched. Waited. Plotted. And now, it was free. Elias, I rasped. Say something. He tried to sit up, coughing blood, his face pale and sunken. His eyes fluttered, unfocused, but still locked on me with certainty. You're not. Evan. I froze. I watched them take him, Elias croaked. The moment you stepped into the mirror room, he never came back. I came back, I insisted. I remember everything. Memories don't make you real. His voice cracked, but there was fire in it. They've tricked you. Switched you. You're wearing his skin, but the soul, it's still trapped. I stumbled backward, collapsing into a chair in the forgotten room, my thoughts unraveling. The air around me thickened, and the wood of the walls seemed to twitch with each of my heartbeats. The mirror shard on the ground pulsed, dim, but alive. I picked it up again and held it close. Show me, I whispered. It trembled. Then flickered with a sickly gray glow. And I saw it. Clear as day. Me, the real me, trapped inside the mirror, screaming soundlessly, pounding against glass that would never break. His eyes met mine. And I knew. He was Evan. I was the copy. The truth hit like a crowbar to the ribs. I wasn't the twin who had been freed. I was the reflection who had stepped out when the door opened. The one who had mimicked Evan's breath, speech, heartbeat. Every step. Every thought. But I was a shadow. A hollow imitation. A soul wrapped in stolen flesh. And now. I was rotting. My skin began to ache, tight, like it didn't fit anymore. Veins darkened beneath the surface. My fingertips burned. My teeth throbbed with pressure. And inside my chest, something moved. Something trying to tear out. Elias groaned from the corner. You have to send it back. How? He pointed toward the mirror shard in my hand. Use it. While you still look like him. Before the rot finishes. What happens if I don't? Elias stared through me. Then this world becomes your mirror. And everything in it breaks. I left the forgotten room, half dragging my leg, my vision warping. The hallway twisted. Wallpaper peeled like skin. Shadows whispered names I'd forgotten. The air smelled like burning glass. I reached the upstairs bathroom mirror. It had remained untouched. I tore off the cloth covering it, and screamed. The reflection didn't match. I stood before the mirror, but what looked back wasn't me. It was something else. Something taller, thinner. With skin stretched tight over bone and hair like seaweed. Its mouth was sewn shut with red thread. Its fingers were long and ended in small mirror fragments that clicked against the glass. It tilted its head. Watching me. Waiting. Breathing. I raised the shard. The reflection raised its hand too, but it held nothing. That was the key. The real me still had no way back. I pressed the mirror shard against the glass. A sound like cracking ice filled the air. The mirror rippled. Behind it, the trapped Evan opened his eyes. He ran toward the surface. The two of us met at the boundary, his palms against mine, separated by that infinitesimal thin skin of reality. I remember now, I whispered to him. You were never supposed to go. He shook his head slowly. You have to return, I said. You belong here. And I didn't. I turned to the mirror creature beside me. Take it back. The reflection snarled. It didn't want to. But I had the shard. And I knew the chant now. Burned into my bones from the mirror world. I began to whisper it. Low. Feverish. The room darkened. The air trembled. The mirror screamed. My skin cracked. From the inside, I was peeling, glass splitting down my arms, reflecting all the versions of myself I'd ever stolen. Each crack revealed hollow nothing beneath. My body started to tremble violently. Finish it, Elias shouted from downstairs. I pressed my face to the mirror. I could see Evan inside, eyes wide, desperate, begging. Take it back, I whispered one last time. And the mirror exploded. Glass rained down. Darkness swallowed everything. And then. Silence. I woke on the floor. Covered in blood. Breathing hard. Elias was crouched over me. His eyes filled with tears. Evan. I nodded. The pain was unbearable, but it was real pain. Organic. Mortal. The body I'd returned to was mine. No rot. No mirror-thin skin. No hunger inside. The creature, the other me, was gone. I looked up at the shattered mirror. And in it, nothing looked back. But it didn't end there. It never ends with mirrors. Because later that night, as Elias and I sat silently on the porch, trying to believe it was over, we saw the bathroom light flicker on. Then off. Then on again. And when we entered the room, there was a message carved into the inside of the new mirror. Reflections never die. The message burned itself into the mirror like frostbite. Reflections never die. I stood there, breath shallow, Elias behind me frozen in place. The mirror had been replaced just 2 days ago, clean, untouched. No cracks, no stains, no signs of the horrors we'd endured. But now it whispered again. Calling. Remembering. The words didn't vanish. They deepened. Carved themselves deeper into the glass as if an invisible finger dragged through molten ice, leaving grooves that began to bleed. Not red. Not blood. Silver. The mirror was crying liquid reflection. I wanted to run. To smash it. But I couldn't. The pain in my chest had returned. A sharp ache, like something was stretching inside my ribcage, too large for the body it inhabited. My hand trembled. I gripped the sink to steady myself and felt it, a heartbeat that wasn't mine, thrumming just beneath the surface of the porcelain, in rhythm with the mirror's silent pulse. Then came the whisper again. Low. Humming. He's still inside. Elias, I said, we didn't finish it. He's not gone. The twin. Elias didn't answer. I turned to look. And my breath stopped cold. His eyes. Pitch black. Glass-like. Reflective. Elias? I whispered. He tilted his head slowly. His voice, when it came, sounded like a chorus, my brother, layered over something deeper, wetter, and ancient. You switched, but he didn't leave. He stayed. With me. No, I brought Evan back. I returned. You returned, the voice said through Elias. But he followed. I stumbled backwards. The mirror pulsed. My reflection began to shift. Not mimic, change. The eyes darkened. The mouth split wide. The skin peeled back in slow, sick strips like wet paper. The mirror wasn't showing me anymore. It was showing what lived beneath me. The part of me that never left the mirror world. The parasite. The shadow. The twin who never had a name. The mirror screamed. And I felt it inside me, awakening. The walls around us began to shift. Paint bubbled and ran. Nails popped from wood like teeth being spat out. The lights exploded one by one, bathing the room in a dim gray glow like dusk seen through a storm cloud. Elias dropped to his knees. From his mouth poured shards of glass, small, perfect mirror triangles, cutting his tongue as he gagged on them. His fingers bled as the same material grew beneath his nails. He screamed, but the sound fractured. Like someone scratching a record made of bone. I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't lose him. I grabbed the mirror shard we had hidden in the drawer, wrapped in cloth, humming with low vibrations like it remembered everything. The final weapon. The first piece of the original mirror that had started all of this. The one that had watched me since birth. I approached the mirror. The carved words bled more rapidly, dripping silver down the surface, pooling at the base of the sink like mercury tears. I raised the shard. The mirror rippled. And behind the ripples, I saw him. My twin. My true twin. Not the reflection. Not the mimic. The thing that had never been named. He stood behind the glass, grinning with someone else's face, naked and twisted, his chest covered in scars that moved and blinked like mouths. His hair floated around his head like it was underwater. His voice was inside my bones. I never left. I only needed the door to stay open long enough. For all of me to crawl through. The silver blood on the mirror rose into tendrils, reaching for me like vines, wrapping around my fingers, arms, throat. I screamed and drove the shard into the mirror. Everything stopped. The moment the shard struck the surface, the mirror imploded inward, not outward. It folded into itself like a whirlpool of light and sound, dragging in air, matter, time. It pulled me forward. The room bent. The floor cracked. Gravity reversed. And I fell in. The mirror world was waiting. But this time, it was different. No maze of reflections. No distorted versions of me crawling through glass. Only one corridor. One long hallway made of pitch black mirror. At the far end, a door. A perfect, flat circle of glass. No handle. No frame. Just an orb hanging in the dark. Inside that orb. I saw Elias. Trapped. Screaming. And me, standing over him. Grinning. I ran. The floor cracked beneath my feet, shattering with every step. Voices erupted from the darkness, shards of my own mind trying to pull me back. You don't belong here. You are the shadow. Let him go. Take your place. I reached the orb. The reflection inside turned to face me. He wore my face. But I saw it now. He wasn't a copy. I was. He had been the original. And I was born of a mirror. I know what I am, I said aloud. The thing inside laughed. You're me. No, I whispered. I'm what's left. I raised the shard. And drove it into my own heart. Pain like light. Pain like glass shattering in my lungs. Pain that sang like a choir of broken children. The mirror world cracked. And cracked again. And then collapsed. I woke on the floor of the bathroom. The mirror, gone. Shards scattered across the floor like ashes. Elias groaned behind me, alive, breathing. His eyes, clear. Human. I looked down at my chest. No wound. But the mirror shard lay beside me, still humming. Waiting. Is it over? Elias whispered. I didn't answer. Because as I stood, I caught my reflection in the smallest sliver of mirror left on the floor. It blinked. A second too late. And smiled. The end.